Hi guys, and welcome to today's session. So we're going to be doing a second pass over and a final pass over this little nose study. So you can see it's pretty choppily painted in. So all I'm going to be doing today is just kind of making some refinements, developing the modelling a little bit, developing the colours slightly. Nothing drastic, it's just sort of polishing off. And I'm pretty happy with how much all the forms are in. So possibly at this sort of stage of a study like this, you might be kind of adding smaller forms, but most of the small forms are kind of nicely placed, I think, in this one. So I'm going to try to adhere to the overall structure that I already got in the first session, and just thinking a little bit more about how do I smooth things out, how do I get a skin texture that I'm happy with, or make things lighter, darker, etc. And so the point of it is we're learning about the nose structure, which we sort of did in the first pass, and then we're sort of learning about painting skin, but in a fairly kind of compressed little piece. So rather than trying to take on a whole portrait, this is a good way to kind of just sort of do a little bit of one, practice out some techniques without it feeling quite so serious or intimidating as a whole portrait. First thing I'm going to do is just oil in the whole little piece. So I've got just my medium, which I'm just laying over a little bit of it. And what that'll do is create what's called a couch. So basically a little bit of a sort of softer, it's a bit like painting wet in wet with watercolors. So rather than going onto the dry canvas, I can do my kind of blendings and glazings over something that's a little bit smoother to work over. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some black, and I often do this. I did it in the first piece that we did, and I use black to kind of just immediately push certain elements darker in a piece without changing the underlying painting. So you'll see if I spread this black paint into this little kind of occlusion shadow where it's quite dark in that crease, and then spread it out, I can place them up here as well. I can just very slightly kind of push those parts just a little bit darker, and then I can pull the color out. And it's kind of remarkable how much you can sort of see that's already starting to model a lot more, that little shadow part of the nose. I really think it's a really useful little technique. So I can do it down here as well if I want to make the moustache a little bit darker, and also the sort of wrap down around his mouth. So we just lay it in, and then we pull it out towards the light, and it just rounds things off for us a little bit. And what we'll be doing is we'll be going in and tweaking this, so this isn't the sort of final state of the modelling. But I like to do this and just try to get as much done as possible just using this very simple little technique. Now I should also add it works a bit better if you're using Ivory Black as your black. And I would say that's because Ivory Black being quite a cool black, so if you mix it with white, it kind of shifts to almost like a blue colour. There's an effect when you're glazing like this, so when you're putting a transparently laying a dark tone over a lighter tone, there's a tendency for it to do a sort of a warm shift. So it kind of looks warmer when you glaze the color than when you put it on directly. The opposite tends to happen when you're putting a light color over a darker color. That's what I refer to as a scumble, although it's got different names based on different people's sort of backgrounds and systems when they paint. But yeah, so it tends to do a bit of a warm shift. So you probably find if you did this with something that's like a warm black, a black that has more of a kind of like red undertone, it might go a bit too warm, like too hot when you do this sort of thing. Whereas because the Ivory Black's a cool black, sort of has a blue tone to it, I find when you glaze it, it kind of just averages out to being a pretty sort of good neutral, pure neutral color, and doesn't take on any kind of strong, warm or cool tone to it. But you can see just doing that's really, if you go back to the beginning of the video, it really just pops the painting out. I'm just going to do a tiny little bit more down this side, this nose. So we're not altering the modeling at all. Not changing the shapes doing this because the shapes are still going to be visible given it's a transparent pass. But we're making it a bit more delicate or a bit more complex, the shading. That's sort of the effect that it's having. So yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm just using the same brush. And I want to lay in my highlight color. I'm going to try to figure out if I want my highlight to be pure white or maybe white with like a touch of a blue in it. Because I get a slight kind of blue sense, possibly blue sort of around the edge, but like a slight blue sort of tone to the light that's hitting this highlight rather than it being a pure white. Again, I'm using titanium white. Titanium white has a cool element to it, so it sort of has a cool shift. It's not what would be considered a warm white exactly, but yeah, that works quite well. So I've added a little bit of cobalt blue into my white, and that looks not too bad. I'm now going to mix up just a little bit of my blue and I've put some burnt umber. And I want to try to figure out what color we want this side of the nose to be. So again, it's catching a little bit of reflection off the dominant light. We don't want to do it as simply as it just being a pure white color. So I'm going to try like a little bit of a sort of, this is actually a scumble, so if I kind of thinly pull that over the underlying tone. So I'm introducing a little bit more Cad Yellow and Cad Red to these flesh tone mixtures. I'm just introducing a little bit more red into the tip of the nose. I want to make that slightly redder. So the main thing I'm trying to get at the moment is I'm working on this nose because I want to get just the right turn from light to dark at the tip of this nose. So I feel like the dark isn't quite pushing enough up into the lighter tone. I'm also pulling a little bit of just burnt umber, glazing the burnt umber, so the same as we did with the black. Pulling a little bit of burnt umber across the shadow too. Basically, in general, just trying to pull a little bit more shadow across the left-hand side of the nose. So this is just a little bit more burnt umber, using the burnt umber in the same way as the black. So it gives me a slightly warmer glaze and not quite so dark as well. So I'm getting happy with the sort of balance of tones and colours. If I was doing a study like this and then intending to sort of turn it into a larger piece, maybe from the entire original portrait, I'd be using this as a way to kind of get a feel for the colours that I'm going to use. So you'd want to take note of sort of what works and what doesn't work. I'm going to add a little bit more white down the bridge of the nose. So I just want to widen and extend this highlight down a little bit. Building that highlight up a little bit more. that's pretty good, I think. I'm happy with that level of detail. So like if you imagine this, you take this sort of in a sort of full sense. So this was just one aspect of the portrait. This would be a reasonable level of detail. It doesn't necessarily feel like quite so much detail when it's zoomed in, but if you can achieve the level of detail that we've got here with this little study across the whole portrait, it'll feel pretty complete. So in that sense, I'd be happy with this as a study, because it's a study for the kind of like what we'll attempt to be attempting to go for when we complete the whole actual piece. So maybe just pull a little bit more light down here. And maybe just a touch actually of the moustache kind of coming out a little bit higher up as well. That's probably actually something I didn't quite get in. I mean, it's not exactly necessary because we're doing a nose study, not a mouth study, but maybe a little bit more of the moustache would be good. So if you're doing your own, kind of bear that in mind. Pull that down a little bit lower. Yeah, that's it. Pretty happy with that as a little study. As always, if you guys have a go and you have any questions at all, you can post them as a comment on the video, and I'll get back to them next time I'm on posting on YouTube or checking out the YouTube. If you want to see more videos from myself and other tutors, you can click the like button and follow us on YouTube. And you can also visit our website to see the sorts of paid qualifications that we offer. And there's a link in the description to the website as well. Just doing some final little, sort of started fiddling while I was talking, so now I have to carry on a little bit. But yeah, that's the end of my spiel, and I'll just finish those tiny little changes. Blend them out slightly. And yeah, leave it there. So I'll see you guys soon. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and look forward to hearing what you think. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.